بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وارواح العالمين له الفداء رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. It's a pleasure to be here. Now are about to start the holy month of Ramadan, and we have the tawfiq of going over some of the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt and trying to improve ourselves and better ourselves. Our mission for these next 6 days is that we'd like to prepare ourselves to be the elite soldiers of the 12th Imam. We're going to be going over a wonderful text. The hadith which I have the tawfiq to discuss are hadith which is actually known as the hadith of the Mi'raj of the Prophet of Allah. Many times when the Ahlul Bayt would speak, they would speak to us on a level that we could understand. So you ask the Imam a particular question, he takes in mind the level that you, the narrator of the hadith, have, and based on that he answers the question. But these hadith are different. These hadith are the hadith which are a conversation between Allah and the Prophet, at the Prophet's level. They didn't bring it down, not one iota. And the Prophet is being given instructions, and ulama have gathered, they got the hadith. Some of our greatest urafa have given sharh and commentary on this hadith to help us to be able to understand this hadith in the light of the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. But one thing I would say is that the hadith is heavy. There will be some things in the hadith that maybe we haven't heard in other places, so we look to see how the Ahlul Bayt would explain this hadith using verses of Quran and Sunnah. The part that I've chosen is one of those parts. Let me tell you the hadith itself. The hadith starts off in this way: Ya Ahmad, abghid ad-dunya wa ahlaha wa ahibb al-akhirah wa ahlaha. O Ahmad, Allah talking to the Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam, he says, that, O Ahmad, hate this world and the people of this world, and love the hereafter and the people of the hereafter. And the hadith continues afterwards that the Prophet of Allah asks, well, who are the people of the hereafter? Who are the people of the dunya? And Allah describes them in detail. So we're going to be discussing this hadith. But yes, those first words of the hadith are a little bit politically incorrect. Hate the dunya and the people of the dunya? What does that mean? I say that because we're in a world, we're in a society, a culture, where the prevalent culture is based on love of this world. If you look at the political system, the economic system, education, why do you go to school? Why do you get a career? Why are you good with other people? Not as a Muslim, but in the society that you live in. It's all based on love of this world. It's not based on God. You don't go to school and study, work long hours because of God. You don't pay taxes because of God. You don't not speed because of love of this world. So it's radically different to what's there in the West. So now before we begin, there's a process that sometimes the Ahlul Bayt do when somebody wants to go on the spiritual journey. We see it in the hadith of Unwan Basri, that there, Unwan, an old man, comes to the Imam of the time, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says that I would like to benefit from you. And the Imam, Unwan says, though, I was someone who used to attend the lectures of Malik, one of the Imams of the brothers of the Ahlul Sunnah. I used to attend his lectures. And so the Imam, instead of accepting me, instead of welcoming me, instead of telling me, Bismillah, brother, please come and sit, instead of doing that, he said, go back to Malik. And Unwan said, I was so brokenhearted when I left. He said, if the Imam had seen any good in me, he would have said, Bismillah, brother, please sit and learn. He said, I went to the grave of the Prophet of Allah. There I made dua. I asked Allah, please turn the heart of the Imam towards me. He says, after that, I went to my house and I was so upset. I couldn't even leave my house, even for the congregational prayers. I just stayed in my house for 2 or 3 days. Just stayed in the house. He said, my heart had been filled with the love of Ja'far, Imam. After that, he said, I couldn't take it anymore. I left. I went to go to the house of the Imam. And then the Imam welcomed me. And then he gave me that wonderful hadith, which is known as the hadith of Unwan Basri, which we use to work on ourselves on the spiritual path. But there's a lesson to be learned from that. First, the Imam said, say no to what you were doing. First, he said, rid yourself of your mental idols. We have hadith that say that the heart, al-qalb, haramullah. The heart is the shrine of God. And it says, do not allow other than God to reside in the shrine of God. Sometimes people have mental idols, people like me. Mental idols from the culture that I grew up in. Things that I've accepted as values, as right, as true. Sometimes I even judge Islam based on these things. Does Islam agree with what I've come to accept as a value? And it's natural. This is the country we've grown up in. But in order to work on those hadith and understand the path of the Ahlul Bayt, the first step I want to do is cleanse my heart of those mental idols. We'll be covering some of them in this discussion over the next 6 days. Idols like pluralism, idols like being secular, idols like the separation between mosque and state. There's a lot of mental idols which we've come to accept and without even questioning. What did the Ahlul Bayt have to say about these particular things? I know the path of the Ahlul Bayt is superior. What did they have to say? Not just accept. So one of these things is love of this world. The society is based on love of this world, but from an Islamic point of view, hadith of the Ahlul Bayt, Hubbud dunya ra'su kullu khatiyya. Love of this world is the main reason behind any and every sin. We have some hadith which state that the best action, the Imam is asked, what's the best action I can possibly do? And they say there is no action after ma'rifat of Allah and His Messenger than hatred of this world, which is radically different than everything I've ever been taught. So now I have to look now and see, well, what are the Ahlul Bayt trying to tell me? What are they trying to teach me? But I know that this is necessary for me in my spiritual journey. In order to be one of those elite soldiers of the 12th Imam, I have to understand these concepts and implement them properly. Now, before I start on what it is and what we're looking for, and if we get time tonight, what are some practical ways of ridding myself of this love of the dunya? Before that, what are some misconceptions? What are some things that one might understand from this hadith but are not correct according to the path of the Ahlul Bayt? One of them is a common misconception, and that is that we say, render unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, and to God that which belongs to God. The separation of church and state. Sometimes Muslims become secular Muslims. Muslims who obey Allah in their private lives, but then in their social, political lives, are not obedient to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. This isn't a new problem, even though this is a fundamental problem and it exists in the hearts of many believers. This is not a new problem. This existed even from the time of the Ahlul Bayt. I'll give you an example. You know, one of the things that you hear about the companions of the Prophet of Allah is that they were so attached to the Prophet of Allah that when he made wudu, this is towards the end of the life of the Prophet of Allah, when the Prophet of Allah would make wudu, the companions would come and put their hands under his arms to catch the droplets of water for barakah. How much attachment is that? And at the same time, when the Prophet of Allah says, after me, I want you to follow Ali ibn Abi Talib, the people, they follow the Prophet of Allah on religious matters, but then in social, political matters,